Hello, I'm Ed Rabyd, otherwise known as the Rabyd Atheist, a former pastor turned atheist, and now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the video, so feel free to hit those buttons as you see fit. Feel free to comment below, and I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell so that you get new content as it is released. You're also free to share my videos as much as you like. Today is a Friday video, and I'm actually recording it on Friday. It's going to be a little late because of that, but I think I will probably change my time on my videos dropping to like 5 o'clock to kind of reflect the fact that I usually get out of work at 3, and so I can record something, upload it, and get it out if I need to. But as always with Friday videos, this is more off the cuff and more me talking about comments and things like that. I addressed a lot of comments on Tuesday, and so that's kind of been done for the most part. I haven't really heard any feedback on them. So I did have one comment on that video in particular, and I want to thank the person who basically said, hey, post as many videos as you need to. Real life takes precedence over YouTube, and I would have to agree with that. So, yeah, opening up my time a little bit, both here and on my blog, has kind of become up as a priority to me. So I'm trying to make these videos a little bit more, probably over time will become more about quality than quantity anyway. I've noticed that most of the good ones, after they get going for a while, they end up pretty much doing one a week for the most part, and sometimes one every couple of weeks, using a lot of research and putting a lot of things behind it. And that may be eventually where I go. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm, as you can see, when I touch my hair, I'm in desperate need of a haircut, but everybody's closed. So I'm actually desperately thinking of just grabbing my buzz cutters and just doing the whole thing. And going back down, I got rid of the goatee because of that reason, because I didn't know if my employer would make me wear a mask. They haven't mandated it yet, and quite frankly, I think they realize that wearing a mask is kind of a crapshoot. So they've left it to personal decisions of the person involved. So that's been coming in. The COVID-19 thing, of course, is still going strong, except the numbers of infected and the numbers of people dying are kind of dropping, or at least leveling off in some places. So I think we're kind of seeing the end of it. It's going to get warmer. Somebody asked me, seeing we're in Michigan, what do you think about some of the rules and regulations from the governor's, whatever you want to call it, the executive order? Well, I guess I have to go to my overall philosophy. I am an atheist, which means I don't believe in gods. So there's no gods, okay, as part of my slogan. I am also a libertarian, which I don't believe it is right for any person to be in mastery over another. I very much am a follower of the non-aggression principle philosophy of myself. My personal belief is the only proper use of force in any context is either to defend one's rights or the rights of another person. So I don't mind a government that's main purpose and its only purpose is to defend the rights of its people. It's when a government kind of takes those rights and decides to take them away that it becomes a problem. So my slogan, no gods, no masters, kind of comes into this when I look at this. Now, as an atheist, I definitely believe in science quite a bit. I believe in looking at things and having objective reality and looking at data and saying, hey, this is what needs to be done, and this is all things that need to be done as well. And the whole thing behind this quarantine has been this quote-unquote flattening the curve, the idea being not to overwhelm the medical personnel. Well, we are at the point now where medical personnel are being laid off. So I don't think that that's necessarily a problem anymore. We're also at a point where we're also discussing, suicide rates from unemployment. We're also at a point from a political science perspective where we're talking about long-term repercussions on the medical community, whether or not people working in medicine, or if you can be laid off, are you really considered non-essential? Essential. So there's that issue. When I look at it, uh, the one thing that everybody seems to be doing that really gets me a little bit nervous is not necessarily that the liberals on one side are saying, we need to have safety and security, and not on the other side, we need to have, where we say we need to have our rights, we need to have our ability to protest and so on. So my real problem, and the reason I'm a libertarian and the reason why I pretty much look at both sides and shake my head, is that nobody seems to have the ability to just listen to the other side. I really am getting concerned about that in this country because, you'll have on one side, and, if you don't believe in this quarantine, you just want to infect people. And, I even saw a meme where, you just want to infect all the children in school and have 2 to 3% of them die. And I'm like, you do realize that COVID-19 doesn't affect children or teenagers that much. It might make them sick, but the death rate is far lower than the average rate overall, far lower. So it's like, you have to understand that if you're going to solve a problem, you have to look at it as objectively as possible, taking into account the emotions and everything of everybody involved. The best way to do that is give everybody freedom to talk and come up with a good consensus opinion. Governor executive orders, presidential executive orders have none of that. And that's why they're always usually treated fairly badly. People don't like them. I mean, unless it's your side winning, then you cheer them. But if it's not your side winning, it doesn't matter. And so my problem, I guess, is the lack of ability of people to dialogue anymore. I mean, in America, there is no, I want to sit down. If Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump sat down and had a cooperative meeting, that would be the story for the next 3 months. I mean, it just doesn't happen. If in my own state, if Governor Whitmer sat down with the Senate and House leaders of the legislature here in Michigan and had a productive meeting, that would make the news too. I don't think that really always happens because, we have created a very antagonistic atmosphere where, I'm sorry, yes, the people on the one side of the aisle have some definite concerns with this virus. It can be a real threat to people's lives. My argument, as I stated on Tuesday, has been, but we know which lives are the most threatened. We could isolate them without shutting down the entire economy. I think there's other ways that they could do this. If my business where I work currently can initiate things that involve sterilization and social distancing and other things, any business can do that. You don't have to label some businesses essential and others as non-essential to do that. You can keep everybody open as long as they follow the rules. Besides, where I work, I can tell you social distancing and some of these things are not always followed by the customers. It's just, they come to the store, they've been cooped up all the time, and there's a lot of pent-up release. It's a natural psychological thing. So people don't like to be cooped up, and they don't like to be in cages, no matter how gilded, and eventually that's going to start having negative effects. I'm going to say that safety ultimately also is a myth. That's why I bank with liberty. Liberty is not a myth. Liberty I can see. When somebody is truly free to choose what they want to do, you can see that. You can observe the results of it. Security is kind of a matter of opinion, and it's always a question of relativity. It's not absolute. Absolute security is just not possible. You can be at home right now, and I imagine that there is a scenario where you could still catch COVID-19, even if you stayed at home with your family or even alone by yourself. Let's say you live alone and you're not an essential employee, you're asked to go home, and you've been sitting at home by yourself all this time. Now, number one, I'm going to worry about you. Okay. And that's a real issue. And number two, it's still possible that you could catch it. The scenario might be very interesting and involved, but it's still possible. There's no such thing as absolute safety. All you can do is make the probability and government, insurance, all the rest of those things that deal with the risk. That's what you talk about. You don't talk about eliminating risk. You talk about managing risk, and there's a big difference. So no action that we take is going to ultimately eliminate all risks. But at the same time, you have to be free to deal with your own issues of survival. You can't just talk about things and hope that they go away. So on the one side, we have these people that are dealing with security, and I think that's largely a myth. On the other side, we have people proclaiming their rights. I agree with them to a large extent. But at the same time, I also remind them, but your rights stop when you know, all your rights stop with your fist, a half inch away from everybody's face. You're free to get angry. You're free to get upset. You're free to protest. You're free to do the things that you want to do. You're not free to deliberately endanger the rights of other people. Okay, so that becomes a question. Now, one of the arguments that came up, well, yeah, I have the right not to be infected. And my response is, are you going to take that into cold and flu season and sue somebody if you get a cold from them? If the answer to that question is no, then you can't really do the same with COVID-19, even though it's possibly fatal to you. It's not an assault. The problem with viruses is I do believe that they're classified as acts of God, which is a classification that atheists don't particularly care for, but it's a natural phenomenon. A person may be completely oblivious that they have it, okay, so they may not deliberately even give it to you. So it's not that people willfully go out and give it to you. Well, if your actions are reckless, well, yeah, except I've seen a lot of reckless actions by government officials. In my own state, Governor Gretchen Whitmer is facing heat because when she signed the executive order giving $1,000 fines and possible 90 days in jail for violating social distancing, she's doing it with 9 or 10 people in the background, shoulder to shoulder behind her, which showed a little bit of poor leadership on my part, because it would have been a perfect opportunity for her to have a teaching moment with the people of Michigan and say, this is what we mean by social distancing, and actually maybe sign that by herself, and then have 2 people standing 6 feet away from her on both sides of her seat. And then she could have pointed, this is what we're talking about. This is 6 feet distance. This is how far you need to stay away from each other. She didn't do that. She took it as a photo op opportunity. And she caught, rightly so, flack for that, and she should. Some of her other executive orders have been, we can argue whether her heart's in the right place, but you're basically saying, oh, well, if you have so much size in your store, you can't, sell this, this, and this. I'm not really sure that she has the right to tell a store what they can and cannot sell, but a lot of people are complying because they just don't want to get in trouble. But at the same time, that doesn't make any sense to me. If, for instance, in gardening supplies, I want as many gardening stores open so that the amount of people buying that stuff is diffused over a larger amount of stores, so there's less chance. Also, bigger stores have the ability to have larger areas. The garden center on most major retails is fairly large, and you can most certainly make sure people keep social distancing in the large thing. If they go to a small mom and pop garden store, that may not be the case. So there's just some things that just didn't make sense to me. If a guy's got a boat on the lake, I don't see the point of why he can't use his motor. He's already there. He's already on the lake. I mean, if you want to say, hey, no, if your boat's already on the water, fine, you can use it. If it's not, you can't use the launch ramp. That would have been a better way to go. There's also, I think Gretchen provides me another interesting bit of cooperation. Recently, there was a protest, a drive-in, basically, to Lansing. Nobody left their car. Nobody did anything other than honk their horns and make a nuisance out of the cell. There was a lot of people that accused them of blocking off the exits and entrances to the hospital. The problem is, when I read all the eyewitness reports, there were reports on both sides, which once again proves how eyewitness testimony is pretty much damn useless, because people are going to see what they want to see. So it really undercut all that. But when I looked at that, my problem with Gretchen as a leader at that point, and this is very different than one of her opposite numbers, say in a Governor Cuomo. Governor Cuomo has addressed his critics with a lot of patience, and he's acquiesced certain things. He's heard the cry, hey, we need to get the economy going, otherwise we're going to be there's going to be bigger trouble down the road if we don't. And he's agreed with that, and he's had dialogue a little bit with those people. And good, bad, or ugly, I don't know what that dialogue entails. I just know that he is handling this from an attitude standpoint a lot better as a leader. Whereas Gretchen kind of has not really alleviated the concerns of the quote-unquote non-essential businesses of what they're going to do. How do they stay in business through this? She really hasn't come out and addressed it, at least not in what I've heard. And she really needed to kind of alleviate their fears. I think a good leader alleviates fears, and I don't see her doing that. So for me, she provides a good example of what I'm talking about, in the sense that she's not listening to the other side. She's just making decisions and doubling down. And this leads to my observation that I think the more deadly disease than COVID-19 is simply self-righteousness. Yes, I'm going to get into the religion here today, trust me. Where do we learn this? Where do we learn self-righteousness is okay? I would argue that we learn it from our religions. We learn it from the idea that we are right, everybody else is wrong, and so therefore we don't have to listen to anybody else when they tell us something different. It basically reinforces your cognitive dissonance. And when you get used to that, you get used to living in a world where a lot of people are that way, you begin to, once you've made up your mind, you stick with it come hell or high water. As an atheist libertarian, on the atheist side, I am open to listen to any argument that supports the idea of the existence of God, or the existence of gods, or some divine or spiritual force. And I will change my mind if I am presented with good evidence. As a libertarian, I'm fully free to look at government and treat it the same way as I treat God. I suppose the difference between government and God is government I actually can see exists. The question is, sometimes to me, if you're going to convince me as a libertarian that I have to go along with a government action, then you have to justify how that action does two things. One, actually helps the situation, and two, doesn't violate anybody's rights. I think a lot of solutions fail because of one of those two things, that don't actually help anything, or they don't actually protect rights, they actually assault them. I think that solutions could have been found. There's plenty of smart people in this world. If they put their heads together, we could have found solutions that didn't disrupt a whole bunch of people's lives, while at the same time, keeping people safe, as much as possible, minimizing the risk of those that are at the greatest at risk. So those are kind of some of my rambling thoughts here. I mean, please don't take this as well-researched stuff right now. This is a Friday video. I'm just kind of speaking off the cuff. But from my perspective, when I look at where did my self-righteousness come from, it's the simple things that I was taught as a child, that this is the right, this is the truth, don't let anybody tell you different. And it took a lot of time to get over that. Well, I'm kind of transferring this understanding to politics, where you have to say, I have to learn how to not just assume that I'm right. And I need to start listening to the opposition sometimes, because sometimes the opposition makes a valid point. And you have to acknowledge that it's a valid point. I think too many people are polarized. They're either siding with security or they're siding with liberty. I applaud both. I mean, one's very concerned about people's lives. Other persons are concerned about their livelihood. Both are very equal rights to consider. The right to live, the right to liberty, and the right to pursuit of happiness are all at stake here. And one side is saying I have the right to pursue my happiness, and I have the right to be free. The other side says, yeah, but I have the right to live, and I don't think you should attack that. So if you look at it from that standpoint, maybe there's something to talk about. Maybe there's something to dialogue about. But I'm kind of probably holding out hope on something that won't happen. I haven't seen genuine dialogue between opposite numbers in politics for a long time, and it's beginning to get scary. And people can sit there and play the blame game all you want, but you're both to blame. Sooner or later, somebody has to swallow their pride, take the risk of looking weak to their own tribal, political tribe, and do the right thing and start talking with the other side and saying, hey, how can we make this work so ever more people get on board? And I think, that's far different than what's going on for most of the time. I want to thank you once again for stopping by my channel. I hope my ramblings haven't bored you, but this is one of those cases where religion, politics, philosophy, and atheism and religion all seem to zip together. And so it was something I felt the need to talk about. I am an atheist libertarian, no gods, no masters. But, you have to find out, what path you're willing to walk. And I believe that people's safety is a legitimate issue. The right to live, the right to be secure in their own liberty and they're secure in their own pursuit of their own happiness is something that we should uphold even in the midst of crisis. Probably it's even more important to make sure we uphold people's rights in the midst of crisis, given what we know about history. Once again, I want to welcome you to my channel. Thank you very much for stopping by. Comments have a way of influencing these Friday videos, and I will respond to any comment when I can. You can also ask me a direct question anytime if you're looking to understand something. And what would you like to see me do is always a legitimate question. If you have a topic you think I should address, make a comment. It'll become a Friday video. Videos are uploaded on Tuesday and Friday, 2 a week now instead of 3. One thing I won't tolerate is name calling. You're welcome to demonstrate that somebody is a fool. Just don't call them one. I've been very careful in this video to kind of demonstrate that. I could have called some of the names that I've heard for our lovely Governor Gretchen Whitmer several times that are not very pretty. I could have called her names, but I didn't call her a name. What I did is I demonstrated how I think some of her decisions were bad ones. And I made reference to some of those decisions and why I think alternatives should have been met. And my hope was to demonstrate that I think that they're bad decisions, not simply call her somebody that's stupid or a fool. I don't think that's very productive. Hopefully I've done a good job of that. Be sure to like, subscribe, and get your notifications as you see fit. And hopefully I can someday make you a rabid atheist like myself. In the meantime, this is Ed Rabyd, the Rabid Atheist, wishing you a good day, stay safe, and have a good day.